approved alternative fuel is the third most commonly used fuel in the world. There's an overabundance of propane in the world, and every country produces their own. Propane has a higher octane rating. It's 104 to 108. Ralph, actually, on the propane truck that I drive, the horsepower rating is higher than its gasoline equivalent. We talked earlier, it's a little bit less feet to use, so you'll lose about 5% fuel efficiency on a big truck. When it comes to the lawnmowers, you're not seeing any difference because it's a much smaller engine. 70–80% less toxins, 70% less toxin output or carbon output just because of fuel itself. It is a hydrocarbon just like gasoline. Gasoline is C8, that's 8 molecules of carbon, only 3 in propane. So there's your carbon output that's just in the fuel itself. As mentioned right there, C3H3 is your liquid. It's really called LPG, liquid petroleum gas, and domestically produced. As mentioned, 90% produced all here in the U.S. soil. The other 10% comes from Canada. Now, Canada only uses 20% of all the propane they produce. So it comes just right across there. And in 1990, it was added to the Clean Fuel Alternative Fuel Act. So it is there. We talked about, I mentioned on the video, this came off at T. Boone Pickens. If you've never been to their sites, you should go to the PickensPlan.com. You hear them all the time. This is the 2009 figures of what we spent. 7 billion barrels of oil we purchased last year. And I wanted to break it down, you know, what a barrel. From East Tennessee, I thought a barrel was 55 gallons, but it's actually 42 gallons when they talk about a barrel of oil. 95 billion gallons of gasoline. 1 barrel of oil will make 20 gallons of gasoline. $260 billion. That's hard to imagine. $500 million per minute we spend on oil, and 70% comes from overseas. And the sad thing, it comes from overseas that people don't really care about us. And here we spend our taxpayer money to send our children, young people over there to fight for freedom, and yet that money's being used back against us. I think anybody can recognize that. The U.S. uses 23% of the world's oil, and we're only 3% of the world's population. Big glutton. And the thing about it, as China and India and other big countries grow, they can only produce so much oil. So the bottom line, that oil is going to start going somewhere else. And according to Pickens' plan, T. Boone Pickens, we've seen it here before. The only way to reduce the American people from being such a glutton on foreign oil is certainly to raise the prices. And to raise the prices, the American people is not going to change their habit, as the survey says, until it gets past $5 a gallon. And that's what happens. People start looking. So there's really a big obligation to look at alternative fuels. As I go around the country, I talk about the Smoky Mountains because I grew up here. My double great-grandfathers were both in the Civil War here in East Tennessee. And you know, you look at it, and when you talk to the Smoky Mountains, it's the most polluted national park in this country because it's the most visited national park in this country. Over 9 million people go through the park every year. There has to be an obligation to try to lower emissions. They've done a lot with the automobiles, but they've never done anything with the small engine market, which is absolutely a huge market. When you look at carbon emissions, you know, we always think of course, being here in East Tennessee, we have TVA. I worked for TVA at one time. And we think as electricity as being one of the cleanest ways of doing it. But if you look, our electricity right here in East Tennessee is all 100% coal, the highest carbon output that you can have. And that's what's part of the pollution is here. Natural gas and LPG propane are the 2 cleanest fossil fuels known to man. And you see the carbon output. This is a chart that shows from the making of the fuel to the end use of the fuel of the carbon output. Yeah, we know electricity is clean when you're burning it, but how's it made? 51% of all electricity in the United States is done from coal-fired plants. As they go more to nuclear, then that will come down and that will definitely change. So it just shows you. When you look at poor air quality, road vehicles contribute more than 60% of the 2 main pollutants known to affect health. The American Lung Association, that's the ALA, estimate that there's 152 million U.S. citizens, or 52% of the population, are at risk from ozone particulate pollutants. In fact, on Interstate 40, I've been all the way 40 Nashville, Memphis. You ever see the sign flashing air quality alert? I asked my congressman, what does that mean? Well, poor air quality. What are you trying to tell people? You see them pulling off the side of the road? You see them staying home? What a ridiculous to put a sign up there saying air quality alert. And as I fly around the country, especially in LA and all those, what do you see? Brown haze that you're going into right there. And see, you look at the average person, did you realize you breathe 3,400 gallons of air into your lungs every 24 hours? You know, it wasn't that many years ago that people didn't realize what coal dust did to people's lungs, asbestos, all that. Later in life, what happens? They have breathing problems. And it's the same thing with air pollution. And you see that people are being affected around the world, really. When you talk about lawn care, the EPA estimates there's 89 million pieces of lawn and garden equipment with engines of 25 horsepower or less. And all of these engines put off carbon monoxide. You hear it VOCs, it's volatile organic compounds, nitrogen oxides, and there's another one called PM, it's called particulate matters that are floating in the air that produce up to 10%. It's between 5 and 10% of the U.S. pollution is the lawn and garden equipment. And that's a pretty amazing figure. This typical 3.5 horsepower gasoline mower emits the same amount of VOCs in an hour as a car driven 340 miles. Recent California Air Resource Board report shows that lawnmowers emit statewide 8.28 tons of VOCs a day into the atmosphere. It's amazing. And of course we hear about spillage that's happening in the Gulf. People spill, according to the EPA, these are not my figures, 17 million gallons of fuel spilled each year from overfilling their small equipment. We all do it. You take your weed eater, you take your little lawnmower, it's over the top before you know it, and it goes right into the ground. Amazing figures when we saw that. And of course, more spilled than the Exxon Valdez. We're just waiting to see how much goes into the Gulf, right? As it goes through. So a conventional lawnmower pollutes in an hour is 40 light automobiles. See, one thing people don't understand, how they got automobiles clean. I'm living in East Tennessee. I do have a street rod. And you got the old carburetors that dumps the gas, stand behind it. You know, it don't burn all the fuel. Cars got cleaned by electronic fuel ignition, computerization, so it meters, pressurized, and burns efficiently all the fuel. Then the catalytic converter will pick up the extra 1 or 2% that goes out. Small engines, straight carburetors, nothing to pick up. There's nothing there to go through. And of course they can't do it. So the whole question as we've looked and we've talked about it, are you ready to go green? And propane is certainly an advantage here that could save the environment, save us money, and certainly talk about an American fuel. And of course, reducing our carbon footprint. That's what we're all really after. As mentioned, I introduced the first patented propane lawnmower 6 years ago. And when I went around talking to people in the commercial industry, nobody could care less. Nobody's asking for it. And that's what I said about Henry Ford. Nobody was asking for cars until something came up and started producing. But really the transition wasn't easy for people because it was going to cost a little more. Now that's come around, we have like 10 manufacturers who are now doing it. And here's the benefits of propane, and I'm dealing mainly with the commercial market. Reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, reduction of carcinogenic of 80 to 96%. There's no carbon buildup in the engine. Your engine will last about 30% longer. You go out and even look at my Roush truck, the engine oil's got 30,000 miles on it. It looks as clean as the day you put it in there.
Hey, Jim,
so you have no buildup. Yes?
one thing it always helps to point out is if you use a propane grill at home, raise your hand. What do you say we go get some gasoline and convert your grills over to gasoline? Does that sound appetizing? It doesn't, does it? We grill our food with propane. Yet some people have a problem thinking about using that as a transportation fuel. With it, just a quick way to think about how it is a cleaner fuel. I mean, you stand over there at the grill, you don't have too much of the smell, you're smelling the food. It's just an example of a way, you've got personal experience with propane already.
Well, as mentioned, it's one of the safest fuels in the world. You don't see transports of much CNG. You do see some gasoline, but the flash point that was mentioned in one of the earlier videos, it's much narrower. You basically got to hit a certain flash point. One thing about propane, when mowers set all winter long, as they do here, they won't start. You get shellacking build up on the carburetor. Gasoline starts to go bad in 30 days. So people have to put fuel stabilizers in their fuel. The shelf life of propane is indefinite. You can leave it in a bottle for 100 years. See, it's not contaminated with air, and hook it up and it's just as good. Extended life, as mentioned, no ozone action days will affect you. Just like people have run for the last 50-some years propane forklifts indoors. Why do they do it? Performance, and you don't have the carbon monoxide emissions. They could be run inside. I was in the industry that had the propane buffers above floors. Did that for 20 years. But one thing about propane, it doesn't leak. No way for it to escape unless somebody intentionally. You can't kick it over, you can't do it. One thing about with landscapers, and I hear it all the time, when they send out their mowers, they usually send out 5-gallon cans or cans of gasoline. You used to do that, didn't you, John? Did it always come back full, or what they didn't use? So no way to control your fuel. You know, hey, I need a little bit in my car to get home that evening. You know, so they can't borrow the fuel when you go to propane unless they take the whole tank off, and they can't do that. And since you know you've got a tank missing and it doesn't hook up to their grill. These tanks are 20 times safer than a plastic gas tank. Can't puncture, 12 years life. And of course, as we mentioned, propane averages 10 to 20% less expensive than current gas prices. We're talking commercial. If you go to basically your normal propane guy and fill up your gas grill, you'll pay $4 to $5 a gallon. It's convenience. But we're talking about commercial propane, certainly a lot cheaper. When the Austin Independent School District, I set all of them up down there. We set him up when gas was almost $5 a gallon. That's the reason we set a higher price. The higher gasoline gets the difference between propane. When gasoline is lower, then there's not that much